Faster than a speeding bullet.
I ran until my muscles burned and my veins pumped battery acid.
More powerful than a locomotive.
An idea is like a virus. Resilient. Highly contagious.
Able to leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Hey guys, welcome to the Betterhumanology podcast. This week it's just me, your host Talon Schwalm, here with a special guest, talking about a new topic that we haven't talked about before on Betterhumanology. He's a 25-year retired Air Force intelligence officer, and he's got a lot of experience with our topic today. And this is a topic that really comes near and dear to my heart because I've got a little bit of experience in this realm as well. So today it's a very special occasion because I get to have my dad on the show, Mark Schwalm. And hey, Dad.
Hey, how's it going, Talon?
and so we're going to discuss leadership today, and how leadership can or potentially make you a better human. So, Dad, why do you think we should discuss leadership on Betterhumanology?
Well, Talon, it's critical if you look at how leadership impacts us every day and in every aspect of our lives. It's something that we have to consider for our health, for our happiness, for how we live and endure our time on this planet. Leadership is absolutely a critical factor. And if we don't think about that and think about being better leaders, each and every one of us, or working for good leaders, then it's going to eventually cause stress and strain on our lives. So it's something that we have to get a handle on and understand how it impacts us.
Yeah, I mean, we're social species, so just in saying that, we need to have direction sometimes. And so that kind of precludes the notion that we need to have leadership to be successful just as a human race, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look back in our history, great leaders are what founded this country. And, the thing that bothers me probably the most, and I think the area that we can improve on as a nation, is to build better leaders. And it's not easy, but it's not difficult either. And it's just committing ourselves to leadership principles and philosophies, and letting people, understand these are the kinds of things that you need to do to make yourself a better leader or a better follower too.
Well, that sounds good to me. Some leadership principles and things of that nature that we can talk about maybe in the show here. So I got a couple questions for you I don't want it to be too much of an interview style, because I feel like, even though I'm not anywhere close to the expertise level that you are, maybe I can contribute a little bit to the discussion. So I do have some questions, prompts to get us going, but I don't want to dwell on them too much. But the first one that I really think is important is, what are some of the typical characteristics of leaders to you?
Well, it's funny because if you Google leadership characteristics, or you look at it, most books, you're going to see things like decisiveness, the ability to communicate, honesty, confidence, ability to delegate, humor, positive, those kinds of things. Well, all those things can be important, but in the jobs I've had where I've had to deal with hundreds of people, I'll tell you the number one thing I think is important, and that's a four-letter word, and that four-letter word is care.
Yeah.
Your people will see right through a leader that doesn't care, and they'll also see very quickly a leader that does care. And an organization that's going to be healthy and successful is usually going to have a leader that cares. And what I mean by that is that they care about the people in that organization. They care about the mission, and they're able to balance those two different aspects. Because if you think about it, and I've had a lot of discussions with a lot of senior leaders, and in the military, it's very mission driven. You know that. You spent time in the military.
Yep. Yep.
focus on the mission's got to get taken care of. But for me, the people are the mission because the people are the ones that are doing it day in and day out. They're the one that are, cranking through whatever task you've got. And if they're not really appreciative of what that mission is or what it means, or they don't understand their role in it, or don't appreciate what they're giving back and understand that it's very important, then they're not going to be as good or successful as they could be. So a good leader, I think, has to care, and he has to demonstrate, or she has to demonstrate that day in and day out, because that's going to make the folks that work in that organization understand, hey, we've got somebody that gives a damn about us and is willing to do the things necessary to take care of us, to make sure that we have everything that we need to make the organization successful.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. In the military, I remember hearing a lot of times mission first. I mean, that's something they keep pushing, but a lot of people would say mission first, people always. And, I never really liked that because I was always people first, mission second.
Yeah.
But that's not really the mentality the military, looks for, because getting the mission done is critical. But that's just kind of a core belief that I've always had in my little bit of experience. And I always thought, something that people would ask me is, well, how do you care? I love that you brought up that, because I think that's an awesome concept for how to be a better leader, or a trait or characteristic for a leader, because that just makes you that much more able to be able to affect those people and inspire those people if you care about them.
Oh no, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I mean, and think about it. We've all worked for people that you could see where their priorities were, right?
Yep.
And the priorities might be, hey, I know I've got to do these things to get promoted, or I've got to do these things to make that next bonus, and so they make decisions, or their actions reflect those kinds of things in their lives, right? It's not all about the people or the mission; it's about them, right?
Right.
And so, why they might be successful in some organizations, in other organizations they might not be. So it just depends on what that organization values at the very upper levels.
And how do you get to know them? I mean, how do you care? I do that backwards. How do you care? You just get to know them better, and by virtue of getting to know your people, you'll end up building that care, right?
Oh, that's a great point. I mean, I worked for a guy when I was basically his number two in a 1,000-person organization, and he talked to me about developing relationships. You have to develop relationships with people, because especially in the military, you might have to send them off, deploy them to a foreign land in harm's way, right? And so you want that person to know, hey, I'm doing that because you're the best person for that job, not because, hey, I want to get you out of here because I don't care about you, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I mean, we always selected people to deploy based on their skills and abilities, not based on who we didn't want back at the unit, because again, you want the best people forward. You don't want to send someone that's going to have problems. Now, I'll tell you, a lot of organizations don't have that mentality. They're gonna ship people out who they think, they're not going to help me as much here because I've got to do my job. Because it's about them, right? They care about how they look or how their organization looks, not so much about what's the right thing to do.
Right.
And I'll tell you, that's probably the second trait or characteristic that I would say is very important for a leader, is doing the right thing. It's hard to do that sometimes because it impacts you and it impacts your organization, or it might be tough to tell your boss, hey, I don't think that's the right way, sir, ma'am. I think we need to go this way. And so doing the right thing can be very, very difficult.
Yeah, and how do you always know to do the right thing or what the right thing is? So I can see how that can be a challenge for anybody at any situation, not even just leaders,
Well, you don't always know the right thing. I mean, you think you know the right thing, and you've got to challenge yourself when it comes to that sometimes, because, we're all emotional human beings. We all, feel things and believe certain things. And so you've got to step back and ask yourself, is this the right thing, and why is it the right thing? Is it going to impact me? Is it going to impact the organization? But typically in your heart, you'll know if it's the right thing. And 90 probably 2% of the time, I've always tried to do the right thing. There's been times in my life why I probably haven't as much, but then the majority of the time I have, and it's gotten me in trouble a lot of times. I've had a lot of issues with bosses because I've done what I thought was the right thing, and the good bosses have always come back and said, "Look, I didn't understand why you did this then, but now I do, and hey, that was the right thing to do." And I'll tell you that it's very gratifying. It's painful at a time because you put yourself into some situations that aren't pleasant and that don't feel good. But again, that's what leaders have to do. You can't always take the comfortable option. You can't always take the safe option. You have to take the option you believe is the right thing to do.
I love that you brought up, dealing with, people higher than you or bosses or leaders above you. And maybe we'll have to spin this off onto some kind of mini-series or something so we can have a show on followership as well, because I think in some cases that is just as important for an organization or a team or whatever to be successful. But okay, so caring and doing the right thing.
And I got one more.
Okay, good.
And it's when you talk to your people, speak from the heart.
Okay.
And you see so many leaders nowadays that use notes or teleprompters or a script,
right,
and they're reading their message to their people, and
or somebody else's words maybe.
Yeah, exactly. A speechwriter's words, or their executive officer's words, or somebody else's words. I believe that part of that caring piece, part of being a genuine leader, is you talk to people from the heart and you tell them, hey, this is the way I see it, and this is why I see it this way. And then you answer questions, right? You don't run it from a script. You don't have cards or anything like that. You might, I've written notes in my hand on my Palm Pilot, basically to make sure that I didn't miss a point, but it was like 2 or 3 words to make sure I didn't skip something. But I think that's very important, and I think people see very quickly what you're about and who you are by speaking from the heart, and that helps kind of engender that caring aspect, because they know you're not just speaking from some made up list of things or a script that somebody else has written for you.
Yeah, if you're not genuine, you're not using your own words. I mean, why do we even need you up there? We could have some robot reading off a teleprompter or something like that, right?
Exactly, and the way they're building robots now, that
might be pretty quick.
It might be pretty quick here.
The robot overlords are coming for us. So I love this because I feel like you've broken it down to a little bit simpler sounding for how to for what a leader is. So it's not so scary maybe for those out there that think leadership. Oh gosh, I'm one of those people that'd rather be behind the scenes and do my thing. Just caring, doing the right thing, and then being genuine, speaking from the heart. Are the biggest characteristics you've seen for success in leaders. Now, I think that's a nice breakdown for some of those people that are going to feel a little bit ew about the word leadership or something like that. So, okay, so I want to move on to the next topic, because I'm sure me and you could go all night on this stuff. But so one thing I want to ask you is what are some things people can do to become a leader or a better leader? Because those people I just mentioned, maybe they don't know what to do next.
Yeah, to me, it's like anything else. You grew up playing sports and me coaching you, right?
Right.
And I grew up playing sports, and you realize that to get better at a sport, you have to practice, right? You have to study, you have to learn, you have to use that muscle memory. And leadership's got some of the same traits. You have to be a student of leadership. I think. I think you have to read a lot of different leadership styles and a lot of different words from different people to really understand it. I've never been someone who believes that you create or cultivate one leadership style and you stick to it. I mean, we're all not going to be Patton's. Patton's not the best leadership style for every situation. I've always believed in kind of an adaptive leadership style. And so I've read everything from, Jesus CEO to Leadership Secrets of Attila the Hun, right? Because I want a broad perspective on leadership, and I want to try to understand and cultivate as many of those different skills and traits and knowledge as I can to make me a better leader, depending on what the situation is, right? And so I think number one is, just like anything else, you have to be a student of it. You have to read and learn and understand how different leaders have handled different situations.
Okay.
And then I think you have to put it into practice, right? You have to challenge yourself by putting yourself into those leadership situations. And I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to strive to go get promoted immediately into a job where you're leading 50 people or something like that. You can practice it, as a father of family, or as a friend with a group of friends, right? Or so many different ways. We lead every day of our lives in so many different aspects. As a student, right, in your classroom, when you break off into projects or how you handle yourself with questions and stuff like that, you're in a leadership role, right, in some different aspects. And so there's so many different ways that leadership becomes very important. And I don't think we, as a society, as a culture, we really appreciate or understand that as much as, I think we could.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think there's so many things that leadership plays into that we don't even think of. And I love the fact that you brought up muscle memory, because that's really what we try to do here on this show often, is just challenge people to try new things and get out there and experience the world and try to become better by basically experiences. And so, I love that you brought up that because that's really the flow of the show, is get out there, look for some opportunities, because that's really the best way maybe to help grow as a leader.
No, exactly. Just go into those situations with a little different perspective, right?
Right.
If you're a student and you're doing a group project and it's, you and three other people, use some leadership principles and leadership techniques to help try to get that group to perform the best they can. No group is ever going to be perfect when you get together, and there's always going to be that one person that's going to be difficult to work with. And so figure out ways that maybe you can harness that person who's got something to give. They might not want to give it, or they might not know they can give it.
Right.
But a good leader will figure out how to stretch that person or squeeze that little bit of whatever it is they can do to contribute to the group.
And to be that good leader like you're talking about, I mean, and that's just really, you learn through doing it, I mean, the more time you get kind of on the stick for leadership, the more those tools you'll have in your toolboxes to be able to implement those different strategies to help people, get the most out of them. Right.
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, those are what I call character building experiences, right? That's when you have to try to dig down in difficult situations and figure out, hey, how am I going to get through this? Or, how am I going to make this situation better? Or how am I going to, solve the problem? And leadership is key in all those different areas. And that's what helps define us, right? Is those character building experiences.
Character building experience, like a buzzword for betterhumanology. I don't know, maybe 3 buzzwords. I don't know, because that's what we look for is those trying, experiences that are going to really build mental toughness, build character, just make us better. So I mean, that's great. I'm glad that you brought it there, because I really wanted to ask you next. What has been your best character building experience or leadership building experience that you've had in your life?
Well, I've had a lot, and every one of them is been difficult, and I still have them in my life. And when it's funny. I like being in leadership positions, and the problem with being in leadership positions is they're very strenuous on you, both physically and mentally. But it's a challenge that I've always aspired to do. Not so much that I want the rank and the prestige of it, but it's just I want to be in the situation to help make decisions, right?
Right.
And so I'll pick one that was probably one of the hardest, and I was really down, and I leaned on someone else to help get me through it. But I was a squadron commander in Japan. I had a 350-person squadron. I was dual-hatted as the director of operations for the site that I worked at. So I had another 550 people under that responsibility, and they were Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marine. So two separate organizations, though I had some of my people that were in the director of operations. They were two totally different responsibilities, and very, very challenging job in an area I'd never worked in my life. And this was, after being in the military for 18 years, but absolutely loved it. And the first year was really tough. Worked a lot of long hours, but we went through a lot of things, including a major inspection. We competed for what was the, let's call it the Super Bowl trophy of our particular organization. And all that kind of came to a head at one point. We won that Super Bowl trophy. We're the top field site in all of the National Security Agency at the time. And we went through the joint inspection with flying colors and did very well. And then at the culmination of that, we changed from a group and a site commander that had helped us get there to a brand new person. So just real quick so everyone understands, in the Air Force you have a group, and with underneath that group you have squadrons. And in this case we had two squadrons in one group. So you have a group commander, and at the same time that group commander was double-headed as the site commander. So underneath that site commander, you have a director of operations, which is what I was. So
Okay.
The new guy came in. Within a week, he had flipped the organization on its head and had changed everything.
The Super Bowl winning organization?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Here's a team that had just been recognized as the best organization in basically the intel community that NSA is part of. And this guy had changed the organization structure, did everything. And I won't go into all the dynamics, but in a nutshell, he'd move people around, put them in different situations. And it was very, very frustrating, very, very confusing at the senior leadership level. And I went home that night and after the week and told my wife, I said, Rhonda, I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. I always said when I'm not having fun anymore, I go do something else, and I'm not having fun anymore. This is just ridiculous. I don't do this. And, Rhonda and I have been married a little over 20 years at that time. And she knows me very well. And she looked at me and she goes, if you do that, you let down the people. And of course, that was like a knife in the heart. Right. But she was right, So I had to look past my own personal angst at what was going on and, rise to a higher level and basically not let the people see what was going on, but keep the organizations running as best I could. And I did that for 3 months, and then the group commander, the site commander, got fired. And so there was some redemption there. And I ended up going through.
So bad leadership can make you a worse human, maybe.
Bad leadership. Bad leadership can impact your life in so many ways, right? It can make your life hell.
Yep.
And I mean, think about it today. How many of your listeners out there are working for bad leaders, and they might not hate their job, but they hate their boss.
Right.
Or they might hate their job and hate their boss, but they can't quit because they have to, provide for their family or provide for themselves, or, can't find anything else right now. And so you have to deal with that. And talk about stress, talk about anxiety, talk about all the, physical, emotional dynamics that are going on when you work for bad leadership or a bad organization. It's tremendous, right? And so
Yep.
you've got to figure out your own way of dealing with that. How do you deal with that stress, and how do you handle it? I mean, working out has always been one of the ways I've done that, right? People have got to have some kind of release to get past some of those things, and it can manifest itself in a lot of different ways, but you've got to figure out how you can deal with that to keep yourself sane.
Yeah, I mean, I love that you brought up this example, because I think it shows how bad leadership can not only affect productivity and like the organization's success as a whole, but also like the disposition of each individual in the organization. Because and that feeds back in. It's almost like a catch-22, because those individuals are gonna not be as motivated or as inspired to be able to do the work. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and it perpetuates the lack of success, or maybe I even say the failure of the organization.
Oh no, absolutely. I mean, that organization was virtually stagnant for 3 months. I mean, we were debating and arguing different aspects of trying to reorganize and do things differently, and it was ridiculous, because you go from being recognized as the best in the world basically for what you're doing to I don't know what I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how we're doing it. I don't know what to do. And so it's a very, very challenging kind of situation, and you've got to figure out how you're going to handle it, how you're going to deal with it. And the easy thing to do is to lash out or quit or to do something else, but sometimes you can't do that, because you let down all the people that are counting on you. And so you've got to figure out, okay, so what's the best thing I can do? I can minimize the pain below me and act like not as much as changing as really is changing, to try to weather the storm until the storm's over, and then move on. And thankfully we were able to do that and move on from there.
Yeah, and you also brought up another interesting point that I think it was, maybe the time before. I don't want to dwell on it too much, but you said, when you move people around, it made me think of, chemistry is a big portion of how organizations do well, and leaders, I think, have a part in making sure to maintain that chemistry and just and helping chemistry kind of grow within a team or a group or an organization. So maybe we'll have to hit on chemistry. Maybe when I brought that mini series, we have to make that a reality, because there's some pretty good ideas that are coming out of this thing. But you I guess we talked about how leadership can make you a worse human. We're talking about stress and then productivity in the organization. But how can having good leadership make you a better human?
Oh my God! I mean, the good leaders that I've worked for make you want to go to work, make you want to give 150%, make you want to do all those kinds of things to make the organization great, right? And so when you're building a team, and you're that chemistry word that you mentioned, it's very important, because you've got to have people that feed off each other and feed off each other's energy, and it starts with the top. Everything starts and stops with leadership. And so if the leader is positive and energetic and cares and talks to you from the heart and lays out, hey, here's the vision for the organization, I need you guys to do this and this and that, you want to help reach that vision. You want to get there. It makes you feel a part of something greater than yourself, right? Being we've all experienced it in different ways. Some of us have been on winning sports teams. Some of us have been in a band or that was recognized, or a group that did something spectacular that built a new capability that nobody's ever seen before. So there's all kinds of ways it manifests itself when you're part of a team that's got good leadership and good followership in it. And To me, it's one of those things that when you're working in an organization that has good leadership, it's kind of like a harmony that builds that you don't have in your life. You don't have all this, backbiting or people talking about this or people upset about that and everything because you deal with it. And it's you talk about, if the issue comes up, you talk about it in the open. Everybody has opportunity to speak on the different things. Everybody has input into what they're doing. And, I think all of us at the very core, we just want to make a difference in our lives, whether it's what we do at work or at school or at home, with our own family, how we treat our husband, our wife, our kids. We want to make a positive difference in their lives. And so a good leader helps us do that and helps us, achieve those kinds of things.
I'm in the same vein mindset with what you're talking about, because I feel like the word that kept coming to me, when you're talking about that, was purpose. I feel like a leader, gives his people, the feeling of purpose in whatever they're doing, and that's just such an empowering thing for anyone, to feel like you're part of something bigger than yourself. That's something else you brought up too. And I think if a leader can make that happen in his people, then that or her people as well, then that can really drive an organization.
Absolutely. I mean, it's if you look and you study, organizations or teams or any entity that's been successful, you can point somehow to leadership being a part of that, right? It was some form of leadership that helped drive them to achieve that kind of success. And so that's why I think leadership's so important, right? Because if we build better leaders, we're going to be better, whether it's in school, at work, or for our nation. And so it becomes kind of for me, the foundation to sustain, our greatness as a nation, but also our greatness as a people. And I think it's overlooked today quite a bit. We talk about all kinds of other skills. We teach all kinds of other subjects in school, but we don't really teach people how to be good leaders or good followers. We expect them to learn that, in different aspects of their lives. And, when you start in school, you get that sometimes from sports, or you get it from participating in extracurricular activities. But it's not really taught even there. So it's more of a leadership by example or leadership by, watching kind of thing. And that's not always the best way to do it. That's not a bad way, but it's not always the best way.
Well, it's not talked about very much, but that's ending today because betterhumanology is bringing the light to leadership. So we talked about how having good leadership can make you a better human, but what if you're a leader yourself? I mean, if you're a leader, how can just being a leader make you a better human?
Well, and again, if you step back from everything, leadership is so important. And if you're a father or a mother, you're a leader. You're leading your kids, your family, your husband, your spouse, everything you do. And if you approach it from a leadership perspective and that caring and giving kind of piece, and it will give you a little different mentality. It's not always about you, right? It's about the greater whole. And if you, that's my opinion. Not everybody believes that, right? I've never had the opinion that it's not about me, it's about us. And if you think of it from that perspective, then you're going to do what's right for us, not just what's right for you. And so that's going to help you, I think, be a more well-rounded person, a better person. You're not going to be thinking about, well, how does this impact me, or how does this get me ahead, or how does this, do something for me to ingratiate, my desires, my needs, my passions. Well, I think you have to step back from that, and if you're going to think from a leadership perspective, it's not about you, right? It's about whatever aspect of whether it's family, friends, work, hobbies, whatever, it's about getting the most out of that for the greater good, for the greater, the team, the family, the organization. And so a leader is going to just make you, thinking from a leadership perspective is just going to make you a better person overall. And you're going to be thinking more holistically than that, single kind of focused that we all are when we look at our selfish side. So for me, being a leader is just going to make you a better human. You're going to rely on character and ethics and things that are more important to drive you versus your own desires or lust or things that you want. And so to me, it's about the greater good and putting others above you, and that's a little bit of a
personal plug.
Well, it's there's some religious aspects to it because it's a service based kind of leadership approach, and that's not always the best approach. I'll tell you that adaptive leadership requires you to do other things at other times. But
maybe we'll have a show on leadership styles.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's probably a good idea. But by thinking from a leadership perspective, you have to take in more than just yourself in your own focus areas, your own priorities. And I think that makes you, right from the get-go, a better person and a better human because you're thinking of more than just yourself.
Yeah, just that new perspective by having to look out for an entire group of people. It changes your way you look at things. I mean, and some say for the better because you're thinking about other people than just yourself. And that, I love how you said that within itself makes you a better person or a better human. Okay, Daddy, we're getting, we don't want to get too lengthy on this one. So we have to wrap up with the quickfire questions. I know I think you got to be a little bit aware of these. These are always a staple in the Better Humanology interviews, but they've been tailored a little bit since this is Talon's first version of the quickfire questions. But these are going to be just kind of, our lightning round type of version of the interview. And, I'll ask these questions. You can give me a one-word answer if you want. You can go in detail if you want. So it's basically up to you. But these are kind of be more general, just to learn more about, about you, what you think. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Number one, if you were going to be stranded on a deserted island and you had to choose one thing to bring with you, what would it be?
Probably flint. Knife would be a close second, but you've got to have fire to stay warm, and then if you're able to kill any animals to be able to cook meat and things like that. So I'd say flint.
Flint, and you don't need the knife because you can kill the animals with your bare hands.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good, Dad. Okay, number two is, in your opinion, what's the best way to build mental toughness?
I think you have to continually challenge yourself. I mean, every day in every way, how to make yourself better, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. You can never stop. And you've got to figure out ways to do that. And that's going to make you better. That's going to keep you sharp because Lord knows the older we get, we slow down if we don't stay on top of that. And so I think you have to continually challenge yourself.
That's right in the Better Humanology wheelhouse. All right. So what's one quote you live by, Dad?
Well, I love that Teddy Roosevelt quote, "The man in the arena." And I love the way it starts out. And he says, it's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. He right there kind of punches in the nose people that criticize others and don't jump into that arena and fight themselves, right?
Right.
And then he goes on to say the credit belongs to the man who actually is in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes up short again and again, because there's no effort without error and shortcoming. And I mean, if you think about it, everybody's life, you have challenges, you have setbacks. Those are those character building experiences we talked about. And so it's not about the guy that's the world champion all the time. It's about the guy or the gal that's fighting to be the world champion, and maybe they don't succeed. You look at some of the greatest inventors ever. They failed thousands of times, but they never gave up. That persistence is what made them great. They weren't willing to give up. They kept fighting. They kept, getting in that arena and trying to do things. And so for me, this has been one that I adopted when I was in the combat control pipeline, because that was the most physically demanding thing I've ever done in my life that year, and it was something that kept me motivated because I was in the arena and I was doing my best, right?
Yeah, I can't remember exactly how you said at the end of that quote, but it was something like there's no fault, in failing as long as you're giving effort, something like that in those words, somewhere around there. And I just love that. Because that's what we talk about, is just get out there and try to do different things. It's gonna push you mentally, it's gonna push you physically, it's gonna make you a better human. I mean, I don't know, I probably talk about that way too often on the show, but
Well, no, that's perfect. And I mean, I think the end of the quote goes something like, there's two outcomes, right? That person knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, or at worst he fails, but he fails while daring greatly. And to me that's what life's about, right? Is you're in there, you're fighting, you're trying to achieve something, and yeah, you're going to fail. I mean, nobody succeeds every time. Everybody has setbacks, and it's not so much how. Patton had a great quote. Patton said, it's not about, how you act when you're on top of the world. It's how high you bounce when you hit the bottom, right?
right.
And that's truly the way life is. It's not about, what happens to you. It's about how you deal with it when it happens to you, whether that's success or failure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that those are both awesome quotes to live by. I think that's some great knowledge to impart just in the quick fire lightning round questions. We're still bringing the fire. All right, we got two more, Dad, before we can wrap this up. So bear with me. So if you could spend one day with anyone noteworthy from history, who would it be?
I always used to think it was, Thomas Jefferson, but as I look at it now, probably the guy I'd really like to spend that day with is George Washington, because, as our nation was being born, he was the military leader that stepped up and built an army and, fought a campaign against, an empire and won. And a guy like that has got some very impressive credentials, even though
Major Cajones.
A lot of people have criticized him through history for not being the greatest tactician or strategist. But he was kind of that man in the arena. He was kind of the guy that jumped in and didn't have all the resources he needed, but found a way. And, in the end, we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him.
So we need more people to jump in that arena is basically the entire topic of this show.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we need more people to jump in that leadership arena and be good leaders to help us, be as great as we can be, because Lord knows we're not there.
Yeah, hopefully that starts today. All right. So last question, by far the most important one on this show. We are so excited to hear what you have for this, Dad. What's your best advice? Totally 100% open-ended. What's your best advice for becoming a better human?
Well, we've talked about it, I think, throughout this discussion, and it's you never stop learning or growing. I mean, you don't until the day you die, and then you can rest. Is basically the way I feel about it. Because if you do, when you stop trying to be better, what's the point anymore? Nobody is perfect, right?
Right.
And so if you stop trying to make yourself either better physically, mentally, or emotionally, or spiritually, even, then it's probably time to call it a life, because nobody's going to be better, and so you have to keep going at it. You have to stay in that arena. You have to keep striving till the day you die, I believe, in one form or the other. And I'm not talking about 80 or 90-year-old folks climbing up Mount Fuji or something like that. But I saw it in my own father. He didn't give up until he couldn't do it anymore. And there will be a point that all of us get to that, right? And you keep going until that day, and then after that, you just do the best you can. But I think you keep learning, you keep growing, and you keep trying to be a better human. I mean, isn't that what you guys are all about?
That's what we're all about, and I love that you're bringing that existential reality to the folks right here at the end of the show. I mean, dare greatly until you die.
Yeah,
get in that arena, because I mean, if you're not improving, then you're just whittling away, right?
That's right.
All right, Dad. Really appreciate you coming on the show this week. I appreciate you sharing all your insights on leadership and talking about some of your experiences. Hopefully we can maybe turn this into something special that we can continue this on. But that's it for this week, guys and gals. Don't forget to go over to iTunes if you like the show. Give us 10 stars. And don't forget that you can always go to betterhumanology.com and get access to all kinds of free stuff. All right. Thanks, guys. Out.
Your best. Losers always whine about their best.